This is The Strange Recital, a podcast about fiction which questions the nature of reality.
Cats that disappear are usually close by, I read somewhere. But something switched in them, switched off or on, and now you're a predator, they think. So you can call them, but they won't come out. Other things are like that too. If you get a map of your neighborhood, or draw one yourself, and then make a circle X feet from your house, your cat is inside that circle, they say. But you won't find your cat, I think, because you've completely forgotten how to look among all the things like shrubs and shadows and stairways you're used to not looking at, really. I don't have a cat. I stole a map of the West because my father disappeared, and I wanted to draw a circle to find him in. But what's the scale? What's the conversion rate between cats and people? I don't think anyone knows exactly. I ran my fingers down the spine of the Sierras. It was like dowsing rods or a Ouija board. I was waiting for some heat or magnetism, some pull from underneath. My name is sometimes Olana. I like to draw things and steal things and go into buildings slated for demolition. Things on the map I stole are not where I used to think they were. Things are like that a lot, I've noticed lately. Dust from the demolitions clouds the world, gathers in houses, on doorsteps, in the corners of rooms, advances on streets in sidewinding wisps. It must be swept out and swept and swept out. Where will it go but into the air to settle again in a different place? It must be swept out every morning and during the day and even at night before sleep. And my thoughts about my father are just like that. Other things in my life are like that too. Regrets are like that too, and I sweep them out with my words out of the corners of my life where they stack up, where hours blow them into heaps, where thinking turns them in spirals like tornadoes that climb and widen. Dr. Winker says I have a melancholic miasma. To me, this sounds like some sorry valve in your heart that doesn't work, or a vine-clogged swamp. Nothing gets through is the point. Like that time I put pretty much the whole lasagna a friend had made for me when I was sick and staying at her place down the garbage disposal in her kitchen sink when she went out. Because the mushrooms were like eating ears, and the tomato sauce tasted like the metal can I used to keep your marbles in. The last time I saw my father, I barely saw him. Now that morning seems sharp as shears, but I know it wasn't. I was half asleep. I think I made my way to the kitchen. I think my father was already starting to leave. We may have hugged. He said a thing or two that I don't remember. I never saw him again. It's one thing when someone dies and you think of them and miss them. Everyone knows it's not the same when someone's still alive and you don't know where they are or why they left or what's become of them. And do they think of you at all? And what are they doing right now while you're thinking of them and you're thinking of them again and again? I let my fingers walk down the Sierras, past Mono Lake, into Yosemite, into Death Valley. That's the place, all right. You're dead before you even know you're thirsty. So I've heard. What kind of name for a town is Needles, anyway? Do you think the dead can love more fiercely than the living? Alive to loss as they are, being dead. Alive to every foothold, being fragile. The taken for granted hold you have on things. Every taken for granted handhold in the world. Like the way the living can fiercely love the dead, but in reverse. Nothing is taken for granted by the dead. To love like that is what I'm thinking of. I saw a gray mirror once in an auction house, antique, freestanding, full-length, gray, like a shell I'd found at Siren Beach, more luminous than reflective, more murky. The mirrors of the dead look just like that, I thought. I mean, the dead are to the living as that mirror is to mirrors. Which means the dead don't work the way the living do. They don't work the way that mirror, gray and lustered and milky, doesn't work as a mirror, which means you can't see anything in it really. You can't find yourself in it. You can't find the room where you stand. Everything blurred and indefinite. That's the kind of reflection the mirror of the dead throws back, because that's what being dead is like, I'm sure. I like to walk by the sea. I like to pick up shells, driftwood and feathers, to put in the pockets of my coat with the things I found in shops that I want for a second or two and take. The ocean is a house the size of time, a house with no rooms, the way time has no rooms, really. The way the self has no rooms beneath its welter of walls, down deep, where the mirrors of the dead cast light without limit, where gray waves thrust forward. You know the self is not a shore. You know because people drown there nearly all the time. You've seen this, maybe even in yourself. I'm a romantic, I guess, meaning I think there is something behind all of this, that all of this stands for something, points to something, has music behind it, something like that, something shining through from behind. Not that music shines, not really, but you know what I mean, when the wind is twisting your hair and you start to spin with your eyes closed by the sea with your arms held out, shining like that. My father was 39 when he disappeared. I was 13. This was years ago. I don't know how many. The woman who sometimes says she is my mother says he died. She doesn't know anything. Losing someone you love who's still alive is like being locked out of your own house. You are going from window to window, and you are trying every door. And at first you're disbelieving, and then you are self-reproachful, and then you are seething, so angry and displaced. And you want to start breaking windows and breaking down doors and throwing rocks and lighting fires and just burning the place to the ground. I sit very quietly sometimes, very still, like someone stunned. I sit very still, sometimes looking out to sea, sometimes on a bench in a park. Sometimes I lie on my back and look at the stars. The stars aren't visible mostly, but sometimes they are, and I lie on my back, and the size of the sky and the distances comfort me. The mirror of the dead is in my room, in a corner. You can't believe how cheap a mirror is that doesn't work. I call the day my father left me Scissor Day. Every scissor day, I cut to pieces the thing that matters most to me. So Scissor Day is a holiday in reverse, a reversal of the engine that drives the world, the engine of acquisition. I started with all the photos of my father. I scissored them to bits and smaller bits. You have 2 earrings and you lose one, and you know that all you ever had was 1 and 1, and that 2 never was at all. You lose a person from your life, and you know that 2 is not a unity of things, but just things positioned side by side. And positioning isn't solid like a stone in your hand that you strike against a stone to make a spark. It's circumstantial and brief, and 2 is just a separation in the making, because there are only just ones. And it's like being locked out of your own house, I told you, but there's nothing you can break to get inside. No doors, no windows, nothing you can break that makes a difference. There's only everything inside you, loose, flailing and battering like bridge cables, uncoupled in hurricanes, reaching out and coiling back and lashing the air and battering the very bridge they've once held up. The woman who comes to the house, the one I told you sometimes says she is my mother, I call her the holder because she holds me here. This roof over my head, scant food, a few coins now and then, like what you'd spare a beggar on the street. Have you ever closed your hand around a moth very slowly until its wings are tucked tight against it, so tight that it cannot even move? And did you notice how it does not any longer try to move? How it doesn't resist anymore? It's just being still in your closed hand. I don't remember who she actually is. She's common as coats and keys, dull as a trowel. Don't even bother to talk about anything important. Coats and keys and chairs and cars and light bulbs. Stuff like that is all she's got. Anything else she blinks like waking in glare. Anything else she turns away like smoke blown in your face. She's not who she says she is. I know. I've followed her. She says she teaches school. She doesn't. She wanders her life like a person with a metal detector at the beach. I think she lost a daughter and can't accept it. Now she keeps me. I swept the dust from my room again today. I swept it from the street in front of the house. Blonde ruins, weightless remnants of what once weighed on everyone, of all that required lifting and carrying and bearing forward, of all that had to be hefted in the transport toward the ever more gigantic. Now there is only the minimal mixture of air and disintegrated greatness, the reminders and the reminded, the bristles of a broom against bare floor. I've learned you should pay attention to things you've always loved. Even as a child, I used to go into the closet and cut buttons from the coats of guests and hide them in my room, and later take them out and spread them out, and how beautiful and magical and hard, like a sheet of music they were when laid out in uneven lines. I cut them with the double-edged razor from my father's shaving kit, very carefully, and I tried not to cut myself, holding only the dull side edges, and never ever put the razor in my pocket and forget that it was there and reach in, and then my pocket would be full of blood. These things that persist in your life, you have to pay attention to these things that stay with you. They don't back off. You can't scare them back. They aren't like skittish creatures huddled on the margins of a clearing you've made in the woods to set up camp, set up chairs, and build a fire or whatever people do out there with that camping stuff. Poles and tarps and Bunsen burners and beakers and dried peas, it's not science. This isn't about hit or miss or mixing compounds or how does someone decide what goes with what to replicate a result that someone else had some luck with. This is about taking hold, being taken hold of.
That was Tidal Lock, written by Lindsay Hill and read by Eleanor Cage. This is an excerpt from the novel Tidal Lock by Lindsay Hill, McPherson and Company, 2025.
Hello, Lindsay. Welcome to the Strange Recital.
Thanks, Brent, and thanks, Tom. Really happy to be here.
Well, congratulations on having 6 books of poetry to your credit, as well as several awards for your first novel, Sea of Hooks, which came out in, I think, 2013. This new one, Tidal Lock, apparently took some years to complete. So give us a bit of its history.
Well, it was started almost immediately after the completion of Sea of Hooks. And it was actually initially conceived to be a deeper dive into one of the characters in Sea of Hooks, a younger woman who assumes dual identities for various reasons. The manuscript turned out to be about 1,500 pages.
Wow.
Composed over 10 years. And then I had the joy of editing it down to about 165 pages.
Another 10 years.
As you can see, I'm a woefully inefficient writer.
Well, What we just heard was a collage of excerpts that include the beginning of the novel, told by this rather enigmatic young woman who says her name is sometimes Olana. So tell us a bit about the rest of the book, but not too much.
Well, it's a story of awakening. Olana is awakening to her actual past over the course of the book. She's trying to solve the mystery of the disappearance of her father roughly 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And she finds herself in a strange, somewhat familiar city that she later conjectures may, in fact, be the underworld. She now has to uncover the truth of her father's disappearance, and she also has to figure out a way to get out of that city. Over the course of the book, mysteries are solved and transformation proceeds.
Now, I should say tidal lock, and let's clarify that. It's not title, but tidal, as in the tides of the ocean, and lock, as in lock and key. Our listeners are probably wondering what it means. Would you tell them?
Tidal lock is a term from astronomy. It names a synchronized orbital pattern where a moon, like our moon, shows only one side to the planet that it orbits.
Mm-hmm.
Metaphorically, it represents the way that memory shows only one side of the past to Olana, and that she must journey into darkness to recover its entirety. Ultimately, she names the unnamed city, she names it Tidal Lock, and sees it as a place where its inhabitants can't see the other side of things.
Well, Tidal Lock fits the strange recital quite well because we like work that is literary, but also has that dimension of questioning the nature of reality. The way Olana speaks in a type of conversational stream of consciousness poetry, as well as the strangeness of her dusty, unnamed city, as she describes it, makes for a powerful note of the surreal. Was that a conscious goal of yours as you started writing the novel?
Well, from the start, I saw the book as heavily metaphorical, but not specifically surreal. There's nothing that happens in the book that couldn't happen. But unfamiliarity is generated by juxtapositions of things in a way that creates that sense of sort of familiar, but ultimately very strange, which is her experience of reality. I am interested in what I might call the mystery of the familiar, and its concurrent mystery of how identity is formed as a somewhat stable entity, which, in the case of the book, Olana starts out very disoriented and her thinking is very disorganized. Over the course of the book, through her explorations, the past does become clear to her. And so the reader has to sort of take this ride with her from being disoriented and then gradually more and more focused and oriented.
Yeah.
Both of your novels are constructed in an unusual way, made up of short and sometimes very short sections. On the page, each of those has its own title, which we left out of the audio for a better flow. I was speculating that this literary device might be related to the fact that you're a poet. Perhaps you think in stanzas? Tell us about why you chose this technique.
Well, Tom, I think you're onto something.
Okay.
I do think in stanzas, and as with poems, the stanzas are put together to create a whole. So essentially, I'm a collagist. I write in fragments, and those become the bits of wood lying around on the shop floor. And over time, I select them and put them side by side in ways that I think are interesting and ways that I think will forward the plot and the development of the character. This also allows the reader to experience leaps in time and place, recollections, random thoughts, philosophical musings hopefully it comes together. But yes, it is poetical, and especially because of its heavy reliance on metaphor and simile, well, as a form of metaphor. It does make some demands on readers, some of whom welcome those demands and others of whom may find them less appealing.
Well, for me, this idea of a story that builds cumulatively from fragments is really compelling. And it's a lot like film editing, it could be said. And like you said, it feels like reality. It feels like reality to me, anyway. Tidal Lock reminds me of other books, possibly Pessoa's The Book of Disquiet, but also the last few works by David Markson, who takes that fragment idea to its extreme. But in a different way, it also reminds me of Markson's novel, Wittgenstein's Mistress, the striking aloneness of the woman telling her story and the reader's question about what is so-called real and what isn't.
Yeah, the the aloneness of Markson's character, seeing herself as the last existing human being, is not really, the same for Alana, who's in this populated city.
Right.
But I identify the book's precursors as Rilke's The Notebooks of Maudler's Brigga, which I read in high school. And also a short story by Max Frisch, which was published in the New Yorker when I was in college, called Study of a Disaster. So the Notebooks of Maudler's Brigga have that first person internal struggling to apprehend reality. And Study of a Disaster was written in this fragmented form with these sections divided by an asterisk. And those two works really stuck with me as I moved from poetry into prose.
Well, I read the book. I enjoyed it a lot, and I was pleased to see Olana's awakening as it reached the end. I mean, I'm a sucker for that kind of resolution without overly doing it, and I think Tom will enjoy it too, so I'm going to loan him the book.
Well, thank you.
I don't want to just leave the reader hanging in some kind of, Beckett purgatory. The novel has a purpose and it has a cohesion, but that it just assembles itself gradually over time. So there aren't any false flags or red herrings. Eventually everything gets tied together pretty much, but leaving enough ambiguity to, in my opinion, retain its interest and not have it be something that Hallmark might be interested in.
You're right. Dust from the demolitions clouds the world, gathers in houses, on doorsteps, in the corners of rooms, advances on streets in sidewinding wisps. I'm curious about the significance of these demolitions. Are they a metaphor for Alana's state of mind because of her father's disappearance? Or are they a metaphor for the state of society or the world? Or are they a metaphor for both simultaneously? And can one really differentiate between them? What do you think?
They are metaphorical for both her internal state and the external state of our current world, where structures are coming down. The taken for granted at-handness of those structures is being brought into question. So it is meant to function both as a representation of her subjective state, but also as a representation of our objective reality. I'm reminded of an old story by the poet Conrad Aiken called Silent Snow, Secret Snow, which I read in high school, where a young boy experiences this snowstorm, which eventually subsumes, his life. And is it internal? Is it external? Is it really snowing? Is it just snowing in his mind? That ambiguity is unpacked in that story. And I always found that question of the objective and the subjective and how they interface to be really fascinating. So the demolition in the city, is meant to represent both.
One thing we're dealing with here is the trauma of abandonment. Olana tells and retells about her father leaving her, but the location and circumstances change with almost every retelling. And the mother figure is depicted as an unwelcome stranger. Now, is there any autobiography at the root of this, or is such a question disallowed?
Oh, it's certainly allowed, and the book is not autobiographical in any literal sense. I happen to be an extreme dyslexic, so the story of making meaning from disparate fragments is in some ways the story of my own development as a person. And in a less exaggerated way, it may be everyone's story, making meaning from fragments. So yeah, not strictly autobiographical, but symbolically so.
Well, at least Alana's seeing a therapist of sorts, Dr. Winker, so she's getting some help, or is she?
Well, you don't really know. Dr. Winker seems to have no other clients. He's operating out of a building that's been abandoned. The elevator doesn't work and the pharmacy is permanently closed, and she finds her way up to his office and describes their conversations. It may just be a platform for her own self-talk as she works her way through the conundrum and confusion that she finds herself in. But it's really just one of a number of ambiguities that are left unresolved in the book. My own sense, and I'm sure the sense of others, is that we live with ambiguities, many of which may never be resolved.
Yeah.
So it's not really sure. There's another character in the book, a so-called friend of hers. And that's also like, is this really a friend? Is this like a make-believe friend? Is this really a person? What do we, So it's all part of her journey toward trying to uncover the reality of a past that is initially very uncertain to her. So yeah, she tells herself the story of her father's disappearance. And one time, he leaves in the morning for work. Another time they're on a train leaving Barcelona. It's like, where did this happen? How did it happen? Eventually she finds out, but initially there's this sense of false memory, because memory is not essentially always reliable, and in her case that unreliability is exaggerated.
Yeah. Later in the book, she discovers in a dark basement a mysterious cardboard replica of her city that she uses in her explorations. This idea of miniature recursive worlds has always fascinated me, even in my play as a child. Maybe one can feel godlike, the master of this little world, sort of like being a fiction writer.
Good one, Brent. Well, the book contains 3 what you might call architectural levels. There's the ground floor of the city, which is Olana's present. There's the sub-basement, which contains the replica of the city before there were any demolitions. And that represents the past, the actual past. She goes down to the basement, she finds the city, and only gradually does she realize that the city she's looking at in miniature is the actual city above ground. So it stands in for memory. And the things that she sees in that replica, she follows the hints and finds locations that evoke memories. And the third level is an attic that comes into play later in the book, which represents the life of the imagination. So you could think about it as the imagined future, but you could also just think about it as how imagination interfaces with our present and our past. And I actually believe that we all recreate the world in miniature in our thinking. So it's a kind of a play on that as well.
Yeah.
Now, I was wondering, You attended Bard College, so you must be somewhat familiar with this area of upstate New York. Does the name of this girl who's sometimes Alana have anything to do with Frederick Church's house? You know, Frederick Church, the famous 19th century landscape painter who built himself a house in Greenport near Hudson called Alana. Is there any connection, or is it pure coincidence?
Oh, it's absolutely connected.
Okay.
Her name is taken directly from Church's house.
Mm.
I was searching for a name that her fabulous romantic father might give her. And he's well-traveled. And I thought, yeah, that fantastical Moorish mansion overlooking the Hudson would have intrigued him, as would Church's romantic depictions of faraway places and environments. So I thought, yeah, this is a name that he would give her. So I did take it directly from Church.
That's cool. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the end of the interview, I mean. Tidal Lock is available in hardcover and Kindle formats and can be found at mcphersonco.com and all the usual book retailers. Are you currently working on any other writing projects?
Recently, I've mostly been writing flash and microfiction, self-contained fiction pieces of 1,000 words or less. And I've been publishing some of those. Also, fragments are starting to accumulate, Secret Snow, Silent Snow, that may transform themselves over time, hopefully within Bruce's time frame of interest, into another novel. So we'll see how those develop.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. And Lindsay, this has been a really interesting discussion. So thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Tom and Brent. It's been a real pleasure.
I think I've had dreams of that city where Alana lives. Abandoned buildings, demolition.
Maybe you're dreaming right now. This is The Strange Recital, on the web at thestrangerecital.com. The music on this episode was Lost in House by Nick Burt. This is episode 26011.